Okay, so welcome back to The World Is Yours.
Welcome.
Today we're having our guest Rabih Salloum,
Yep.
and yeah, we can be more excited. Thank you for coming on our show.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
So tell us a bit about yourself. You are a philosophy professor and you do other things as well, but what is it that you do and how did you get to doing that?
Okay. Yeah, like you said, I do a number of things. I'm a musician,
Yeah.
a fiction writer, and I'm a philosophy instructor at AUB. I teach philosophy at AUB. The reason why I do all of these things is because I genuinely enjoy all of them, and I very early on realized that I liked more than one thing, and so I had to uh, make the right decisions to be able to have enough space to do all of them. Because these are three things that take very different parts of my brain, but are equally fulfilling. So, you know.
All right,
Yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, and you actually took a semester off
Yeah.
from uni, and I actually wanted to register in one of your courses, and
Well, I'll be
I
back.
couldn't. You will be back.
I'll
You will
be
be
back.
back. And you're focusing a bit on your music, right?
Yeah, because we're putting a record out in spring. I think we already released a couple of singles. There's another one coming. Well, it's a bit busy musically, so I thought, a little break from university isn't so bad right now.
That's great. That sounds great.
I find it very fitting that somebody who teaches philosophy also pursues, exactly what they want to in life.
Well, why do you say that?
Because most people I feel like are restricted in the sense that they feel like they have to do one thing and you're I guess doing multiple things that you're passionate about at the same time.
Well, it was mostly thanks to, I think we've all had, or you will at some point, we've all had sort of like defining moments in your education when you're at the right place at the right time in the presence of the right professor usually, that have such a big influence on you at some point. And sorry, smoker's cough.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's terrible.
No worries.
Trying to quit.
We all are trying to quit, right?
It's been a year that I'm trying to quit. And I was third year of college. I had a very specific professor who, at some point, I was in philosophy school too. He was a philosophy professor, and at some point he tells us this one thing that really stuck with me, and all the decisions I made after that were really,
Based on that.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
He said, when you're going to finish your education and go out in the world, they're going to tell you that, time is money, right?
Yeah.
We all know time
Exactly,
is money,
yeah.
meaning the more time you spend working, the more money you can make. So basically, the end goal is money, and time is a tool that you use to maximize your wealth. And then he said, what I suggest is something slightly different. I'm not going to give you a hippie discourse about money not being important.
No.
Money is extremely important, but what I
Money is a means
suggest...
to an end.
Sorry?
Money is a means to an end.
That's it. He said, what I suggest is that you reverse that formula. Instead of thinking about time being money, think about money being time, meaning that the end goal is time, and money is just something that allows you to purchase time. Why?
Maximize your time.
Why? Because, time really is the ultimate luxury at the end of the day, because you're a finite living
Amount of-
organism.
yeah.
You're going to die at some point, and time is really the most scarce resource you have. And so this is the thing you need to maximize. Now, what does it mean when he said, what did he mean when he said you need to maximize time? It means that find out what are these things that do it for you. It can be anything. Okay? Everybody has something for them, and some people have different things, something that has meaning to you. Unfortunately, most people spend their lives doing something that are meaningless, but they feel that they have to do them in order to acquire wealth or social status or please somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And it's not worth it. So what he said is, maybe your thing is just to take walks by the beach. If you don't have time to do that, that's really sad. Maybe your thing is to spend time with family. Maybe your thing is to play basketball, but you're not a full-time athlete. So you need to make decisions in order to keep as much time as possible free for you to do these things. And from then on, it just something clicked in my head, and I decided that, well, every decision I'm going to make, I'm going to make sure that
Make the
there's
things
enough,
that you love the most.
yeah, that there's enough room for me to do all of these things, even if some of them aren't always lucrative. For example, I used to make a good living from music, then it stopped for a long time, and so even if it's not, at least I need to know that I have enough time to do
To
it, because that
continue.
it helps me stay sane and makes me happy.
So is it like maximizing time, or is it maximizing time of you being happy in what you're doing? That's basically the
that's
point of
basically
it.
what it is. Yeah,
I think
meaningful time.
Yeah,
Maximizing
exactly.
meaningful time.
I think I had a similar encounter in my school, and it was with my coach, like PE coach, and I think I was like at this point where I was lost.
Yeah.
And I think what he advised me is to do whatever I want to do, and to do it while being happy. But he said something that really like clinged on with me, and he said that happiness isn't something you pursue, it's a mindset. So I think that helped me like try to like work throughout it, and just putting on like that mindset along everything I'm doing. So
Yeah.
I think
Well, the mindset thing, well, happiness is a mindset, we should not make the mistake of thinking that if happiness, it is a mindset, but it doesn't mean that it's a decision or a choice, in the sense that, because it's very easy sometimes to fall into that trap. Well, people tell you, you just have to choose to be happy. You can't do that. You can't go to a mental health institute and people who are on suicide watch and tell them, just choose to be happy. Just choose. It's not that. But it is true that happiness is a mindset, meaning that it is a particular arrangement of the molecules in your brain. And so if you can find a way to hack that, and doing things, devoting time that you enjoy, that have meaning to you, is exactly one way of doing it. You're basically hacking your brain and putting it in this, fulfillment, enjoyment, aka happiness mode. So it definitely is a mindset, but it's what you do that either trigger that mindset or inhibit it. So yeah.
Wow.
Couldn't agree more with you about that.
That's very inspirational, actually. I think a lot of people can take away from what you just said.
I'm glad I'm known as a demotivational speaker, so it's
Are
good
you
that
though?
it can.
Are you a
I highly
demotivational
doubt
speaker?
I like it.
Is it because I think maybe it is because like sometimes the truth annoys people,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
that's why maybe you would be known as a demotivational speaker.
Absolutely.
But it's bringing like facts to people, and if they can't accept it, then
You can't do anything if you're going to keep basing yourself on the wrong premises. Then you just keep hoping that you move forward, but it's not going to happen. Like you said, sometimes truths do hurt, but you have to start by accepting it before you be able to move forward.
Yeah. Personally, for me, whenever I want to feel motivated, I look in the mirror, and this sounds very cynical, but I look at myself and I say, you are nothing. You are nothing. And I try to put myself down, because that sometimes is the only thing that makes people snap. And allows them to really pursue what they want.
That's what works for you, and it's good that you found it, because people are extremely different. Some people, and that's a problem, by the way, in education, because some teachers do think that if they put a student down, then that'll motivate them. It works on some types of students. Maybe it would work on you if you do it to yourself.
He loves doing that to himself.
Right? You do it you get a sense of revenge. I'm going to show you that it's not true.
You make the mistake of doing it to an emotionally damaged person, and you've created a problem.
Right? Some people, it can be even more damage. You can crush them. So, but it's good. I mean, it all starts with a sort of self-awareness, and it's good that you already found a trick, or what we call a hack, to just instigate this thing in yourself. That's really good.
And what is your academic background?
Well, I studied. I finished high school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do after that. I knew that I was only interested in philosophy in high school. I was really interested in that. Like I remember being in high school, and we only had philosophy in 12th grade, so it was the last year.
Yeah, very true.
And I went to a French school, and we had that in last year. And I remember sitting in class, the teacher walking in first time, and she started talking, and I remember looking up and thinking, what? This is something we can learn? Like, how did I not know that there was something like this? This is really good. And so she ignited my interest in philosophy, but I never thought about it as a career path or anything. And in my head, I come from a background where, you go to university as a prep to then start working. So I was good at economics as well, right? So I was good in economics, and I finished high school, and I did well in economics. I did well in sort of all sorts of things, but economics I did really well. And my economics teacher comes to me and he says, "You did great." The French baccalaureate, right? You did great. What's going to happen is that you're going to major in economics. You'll do this and do that, and within 5 years you'll have your DOSS, and then you'll start working in any company, and you'll have this and that. And it was sweet of him to do that.
Yeah, to go.
But I was fortunate enough to have a super nice conseillère d'éducation, dean, basically.
Okay.
A very
Advisor.
nice dean, advisor,
Yeah.
absolutely. Her name was Kate, and she knew us personally. And she asked me, what is your plan? And I told her. And she said, don't do it, you're going to go crazy. And I said, what do you mean? I have to do something.
Yeah.
And she said, I know you. If you don't know what you want to do, take some time off, figure it out, and if you want, I'll talk to your parents and I'll convince them that time off is good for you. But I know you're going to be miserable. And I'm so thankful that she did that. And there are very few people in education who are willing to call these shots, especially back in the day. I think there's more and more understanding and awareness around it now, but I'm talking early 2000s. So I graduated from high school in 2001, which is 21 years ago now. So I spent a year, I took a sabbatical after high school. I spent a year doing nothing. I played a lot of music, but academically I was not doing anything. And I realized that, the things that I loved the most in school was philosophy, and I was also interested in film. So I decided to go to Paris, and I double majored in film studies and philosophy. And then I eventually continued philosophy and so on. I did 2 masters actually, even in film school and philosophy, and then I enrolled in a PhD just in philosophy. Then I put it on hold and so on. But I started as a double major first, but it took me 4 years to realize that I didn't really like filmmaking, but I really liked philosophy.
Exactly. So I had a similar thing going on, and actually it was up until 3rd year of uni that I realized that I chose the wrong path.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens, but it's like I'm almost done, so I'm like, okay, let me just have another degree.
Yeah.
And maybe continue it. But my focus changed. I think it was a point where I got into this place where like I was doubting everything, and I was like, okay, no, like this is there's no point of actually pursuing it. Like I was going on through like an existential crisis. And I was like, okay, and then I had to find like a purpose of myself, of my own, and continue through that.
A purpose outside of that major.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of academics in general.
Is it because you didn't feel that you wanted to work in that field later on?
That's one, and it's because I didn't see myself in it.
Yeah,
I just directly applied.
Did you know why you chose it? Do you remember why?
The deadline inspired me.
Really?
Not gonna lie, it was the deadline. I was like, okay, what do I like? Do I like this? No. Do I like this? No. I was like, okay.
So you were tempted. You're like, why not? And then
I was like,
eventually,
exactly.
Okay. Well, it's good. Okay, you probably learned a thing or two. You'll have a degree, and there's one extra thing that's not really for you. That's already a good thing.
Exactly.
It's very interesting that, like you said, this one dean basically affected the entire way your life went. From just what she made you realize within yourself.
Yeah, well, this is one of these defining moments that, you can always trace back in anybody's autobiography in a way. Same with that professor that I mentioned earlier in 3rd year of college. We all have people that you encounter, and all of a sudden, your life shifts in a complete different direction. If you hadn't encountered that person, it would be completely different. Yeah. So it's a fun exercise to actually do, and you sit down and you try to trace back. Okay, what are these major moments that seem very banal or innocuous or subtle or almost invisible or insignificant, but in fact, in terms of impact, in terms of
Long-term
shifting
impact.
direction, yeah, they shape you as a person, and they shape your life journey, and they shape your future. Absolutely.
And when you put those small moments in perspective, I guess, when you look at like, okay, this is something so tiny that happened to me, but when I look at it in context of everything that's developed in my life,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, sometimes it's people that you meet in real life. Sometimes it's a book you read. Sometimes it's a documentary you watch. Sometimes it's a movie. Sometimes it's a song. Sometimes it's but you never know. You know, everybody likes to think that they're the master of their own destiny. But in fact, if you do that exercise, you quickly realize that you don't really get to choose much. You know, the things choose you, and you know. All you can do is put your life in favorable circumstances and just be open to different possibilities, and then have enough courage to do a thing or two that sometimes might be a bit daring or scary.
So it's not really something you actually control. Like in life, I think there are two variables, like factors that you can control and factors that you can't control. And what seems to be like the predominant is the factors that you can control, and they have so much weight over your future, over what's going to happen, how it's going to unravel. But like you said, you see what you can control and work with that.
Yeah, and I mean we're not gonna have a crash course now on free will versus determinism, but the best way to follow up on what you said, which is true, is that that little level of control that you can have over yourself has to go through self-knowledge, because at the end of the day, you don't choose what you like or dislike, right? So I can play 10 songs for you now, and you can tell me, oh well, I like this one, but did you choose like that one? No, something in you was attracted to that song, right? I can put 10 potential career paths in front of you and tell you pick one, and you'll say, well, I want to do that. Did you really freely choose that one? No, but something in you is attracted to that. So these are the elements that we don't choose. You don't choose your personality, you don't choose any of that. But the more you have some sort of self-awareness or self-knowledge, the more you can do with it. So that level of control that you're talking about has to inevitably go through a level of self-knowledge and self-awareness first. So know what are the things that sit well with you, and know the things that don't. You know, it's the very basis of you know, the two poles of life, pleasure and pain, that, you know, even the smallest bacteria emote. Even the smallest bacteria without brain, they know that there's a source of food, they go toward it, and they know there's a source of danger, they go. And obviously we're much more complicated organisms, we have complex brains, so it's more difficult for us. The line isn't as direct. But the story remains the same. You need to figure out what does it for you, what's good for you, because there's nothing that's universally objectively good for you. There's something that's good for you. Sorry, there's nothing that's universally objectively good for everyone. There's stuff that's good for you, and there are stuff that are bad for you. Stay away from those stuff. You know, if peanuts are neither good or bad, but if you're allergic to peanuts, you can die. Just don't eat peanuts.
Yeah. And being that you study philosophy, I think there are lots of people that want to learn about philosophy, but they take the subject, I think, in a pretty like scary way. Like this is a lot of stuff to gravel with, these different concepts and these different meanings of life, and tracing them down, you know, to books and stuff, and trying to figure out what type of philosophy you like and the types of ideas that you want to implement in your life.
Yeah.
How, to somebody that wants to start learning more about philosophy, like what would you tell them to start their journey?
Well, I think that if the pull toward it is strong enough, you're gonna go ahead and do it with or without my advice. Most people are intrigued in it, but very few actually pursue it because the pull is not strong enough. But if the pull is strong enough, and again, this is not something you can control, you'll end up doing it. You know, so I meet people who are 40, 50, and they're like, I've always wanted to study philosophy, but I didn't. And my answer is, yeah, but you didn't want it enough. Because if something in you really wanted enough, you would have, right? It can be intimidating because it's not, I always joke about this. Sometimes I encounter people like, oh, you teach philosophy. Me too, I have a lot of ideas about life. I'm like, guys, if you're 3 years old and older than that, you should have ideas about life. This is your normal, normally functioning human being. So, no, it's a very rigorous, it can be difficult, daunting, intimidating discipline as an academic discipline. But it's also extremely enriching. It's extremely rewarding. It's investigation, really. It's discovering stuff about yourself and about the world. It's learning how to think properly, learning how to reason, learning how to structure your arguments. What I would say is, don't be intimidated, because there are some texts and philosophers that are easier, more accessible than others. And well, if you take classes, that's the point of classes, it's to make texts that are seemingly austere and obscure and difficult accessible. Now, of course, if I give you a book now by Immanuel Kant and I tell you, here, read this, you're probably going to throw yourself out the window. You're not going to understand anything. But that's why there's classes about this, right? Mm-hmm. So especially now, there's a lot of information out. So even if you're not enrolled, even if you're not majoring in philosophy and you decide to read. Okay, yes, I'm circling back to your question. If anybody's interested in philosophy, they don't know where to start, my advice for them would be, pick anything that you're intrigued by as a starting point. Yeah. Well, I'm intrigued by this. Take the actual book with the actual author. Start reading it, knowing that it's going to be difficult, maybe boring and very obscure, but at the same time, read either commentaries or follow courses, classes, online courses, get a commentary on that book. This is how you would start. Because if you're going to read, because it takes training to be able to read these texts. It's like if you give me a quantum physics book now and you're like, read this, I'm not going to understand it because I'm not trained. I don't have the right training to understand it. Same thing with philosophy. It's not as easy. So if you're interested in it and you decide to want to read something, start your journey, do it with the help of commentaries, lessons, courses, and so on. And there's a lot of it online nowadays.
Yeah. Do you think people just don't approach this topic or these subjects because they believe this huge misconception it is an anti-religion kind of concept? Because a lot of people just be like, they enter that topic and they're like, okay, no, this goes against all what I've been believing for the past 20, 30, even 40 years, and they're like, okay, no.
Yeah, okay, it's a good question. It's because, but it's not necessarily religion. Religion would just be an example of your comfort zone. It definitely is a discipline that pushes you out of your comfort zone, and that can be very scary. Some philosophers, like for example, Nietzsche has this famous saying that he tells you, like, think against yourself. What does it mean? It means that literally go back home, write down on a piece of paper everything that you hold very dear to your heart, all your strongest values, convictions, and beliefs, and then force yourself to think against them. Force yourself to understand that there are other perspectives and that you could be wrong. Because, the first thing to know is that, well, if you were to go home now and do that particular exercise, write down all these ideas and convictions and beliefs that you hold very dearly, before you even start thinking against them, I would suggest that, figure out where they came from, and you realize that you didn't invent any of them. Everything's been ingrained in you. You've been a sponge, and you've been absorbing information, beliefs, since you were a kid, exactly. Be it religious beliefs, cultural beliefs, aesthetic tastes, ideas. Even if you change your mind, like for example, even if you usually, if you grow up with a certain religious belief and all of a sudden you decide that you're gonna let go of it, it's usually because you've been exposed to another idea that's just felt more convincing to you. Mm-hmm. And that other idea could have come to you in the shape of a book that you've read, a movie you've watched, or a person you've encountered, right? So it's a very humbling exercise to do, and a very good one. which is, well, understanding that all your ideas, all your beliefs came from either a figure of authority, either common sense, which is what everybody says,
Culture,
either
taboo.
media, and media and whatever you're exposed to. But you're basically this automaton that's like navigating the world, and there's information
Coming everywhere at you.
and you retain some of it that does well to your brain, which what does it's tricky because your brain automatically retains the information and the beliefs that soothes that
more
brain.
convenient to you.
Yeah. So it is difficult to nudge yourself out of it because you're putting yourself in a state of stress. And if you have very basic notions of biology, you know that your organism does not like it. Your homeostasis is always trying to relieve that state of stress. And so letting go of very deeply rooted and ingrained beliefs can be a very daunting task. Yes, and that's one of the reasons. It's a long answer to a short question.
Answer. It is.
That's one of the reasons why some people might be intimidated by it. But another more practical reasons is a lot of people believe that university is just a step before you enter the working market, career market, and they're like, well, what am I going to do with this? And we were all brought up that way. We all think, and I certainly thought that before I went to college, but it was in college that I learned that it wasn't. In France, it's very particular. Their relationship with education is very different. And like I remember in the mid 2000s, there were these reforms that the government wanted to implement, and they were supposed to integrate businesses in universities. So for example, they would have companies come on campus and select students, have a say in the curriculum and so on, in order for the programs to be adapted to the needs of the market.
Yeah.
And there were huge demonstrations and student protests that I took part
of.
that time. And I'm so happy I did, because it taught me a lot. And the most important thing it taught me was that, well, university is a space of exchange of knowledge. It's not something that's supposed to serve the market. So I don't care whether it's going to give you a career or not. That's not, you can learn whatever you want, however you want, but that's not the main purpose of university. University is a space of exchange of knowledge and personal growth. And if you understand it that way, then philosophy stops being intimidating. But if you think of university as a space that's just a preparation for you to be employable, then you would think, well, why do that? Nobody would choose that. That's another reason why people would not certainly. It's probably the department with the least amount of students.
Yeah, true.
I went to university where we were 40,000 students on campus.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and in the philosophy department we were maybe 40. That's nothing, right? At a campus of 40,000.
40,000.
Yeah.
How big was that campus? I can just imagine. Was it like?
Oh yeah, we had a tennis court, swimming pool, gym, a circus. There was a circus.
What?
Yeah, there was an actual circus. Yeah. It was huge.
It was a department.
It was huge. It was the Nanterre University. It was huge.
It's amazing. But yeah, I believe you are right in a sense that people nowadays, even before and up till now, it hasn't really changed. People do go to universities to get into the career market, and they don't really think about that exchange of knowledge that you talked about. And they don't really care about it.
Yeah.
It's not like they ignore it. It's like it's in the back of their heads. They're like, this is not going to make a living for me, and I'll just take the courses that I need in order to tailor suit a job or a position.
Yeah. Well, it's nobody's fault individually. Everybody's taught to think like that.
It is.
So if you're not lucky enough to
have an encounter, like you
exactly
said,
to encounter somebody who will show you a different way, then that's just the way it's going to go.
I think a lot of people perceive education, especially in the US, as an investment.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a very dangerous way of looking at it.
Well, in the US it is because of the huge student loans that people take. So
Yeah. Physically, they are taking in great debt
Yeah,
in terms
yeah.
of their money, but also when they think about it in the sense, I'm only doing this to be employable.
Yeah.
These 4 years of suffering that
Yeah.
I'm going through, because when you think about it like that, it is suffering.
Yeah.
I'm only doing this in order to be employable. I'm not trying to gain any the actual knowledge that will help me
Right.
become a better person. I'm only trying to acquire what will make me a better, employee.
Well, the problem with this, because if you were to tell me, you suffer 4 years at university, but eventually you'll get somewhere nicer, then maybe it's not that bad of a deal. The problem is the suffering doesn't stop at university. Most people, after they get employed, they start looking back at their university years by reminiscing and thinking, oh man, university was amazing. Now I'm really suffering, because they realize that getting what they thought was going to be their dream job is not necessarily making them happier. Actually, if anything, it's making them even more miserable.
So they're like, does the suffering end?
It doesn't.
It is true. It doesn't end.
Usually, everybody thinks that once I get that dream job, I'm gonna. That's it. But it's rarely the case. So I hear you, and unfortunately, I wish it were just 4 years of suffering at university, and then the world opens and it's amazing. But it's
no, the world is not that beautiful. It's
No,
not
it's
that
not.
beautiful. It's not that relaxing.
no.
It's not a fairy tale that
Yeah.
we're just having like a very bad moment or like a climax
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
like a resolution. It's like a mix of new problems and new issues and that you're gonna have to face
Yeah.
and resolve. And a lot of people just either like fight these issues or like they run away or like they
Well, it's not a problem having to solve things,
Yeah.
but it has to be stimulating for you. Because once again, make no mistake, I'm not saying people, we should make money to be able to live. I certainly come from a background where I had to make money to
Yeah.
survive. It's not like I'm a trust fund kid, so who could be on permanent vacation. So, but it's very important, and to go back to what we were saying earlier with that time-money dynamic, to
Yeah.
understand that. Once you're past, sometimes we all have to make sacrifices. Maybe some of you will have, most people will have to sometimes compromise, take jobs they don't necessarily want. Like I don't know. When I was a student, I was doing 2 majors. I had told my parents that I didn't want to take any money from them anymore. I was working in a restaurant. I didn't want to do it, but I felt that it's a sort of sacrifice I'm doing, and I was young. I had the energy to do it, and I had the drive to do it. I wanted to feel sustainable, and I was surrounded by students and friends who were, and I wanted to be like them, see what that life is. So we all have to make with things that aren't necessarily to our liking, as long as we keep in mind that the end goal is not there. Just keep enough time and leave enough room for this other stuff that really has meaning to
really
you. 'Cause
matters to you, yeah.
that's the most difficult thing. And people who depression is really an absence of meaning. When everything feels stale and everything feels bland, there's no meaning to your
Yeah.
existence. That's like the worst side of the spectrum. But a lot of people fall into that. Well, there's really no proper meaning to their existence, so they go from work to just entertainment, or like happy hour, get drunk, forget about it, watch Netflix, just be entertained all the time so I don't have to think about it. That's why it's very difficult for anybody to just sit and do nothing.
Yeah.
Even if you're in your car on your own now, the first thing you do, most people, is just you take the phone and you text anybody. So because
Very true.
I don't want to feel alone. Like I'll just text anyone. I'll do anything just to keep my mind entertained, because if I stay with myself long enough, then
And the thoughts will come back, and
Yeah.
that would be like damaging. But
Not
my
a good
question
experience.
following meaning, is there actually meaning to life? Like,
No.
Yeah, there is.
No.
That's the very short answer. No.
Not that we know of. I
Yeah.
mean, every culture, certainly, if you're religious, then you have religious answers to
Yeah.
that. If you're not religious, you're gonna have to find your own. I mean, the good thing, because religion is a great package, because it alleviates a lot of mental discomfort. The lack
Yeah.
of meaning, fear of death. and so on. So if you're a true believer, that's great because you're alleviated from a lot of trouble that
And thoughts.
yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. This is an example that I always used to use in class. Like,
It's just answers a lot of unanswered questions.
just imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine a believer and an atheist going to the same funeral. Their friend died or their parent died, and one of the siblings is a believer and the other one is an atheist. It's a completely different experience. Like one of them is, both of them are sad, obviously, but for one of them, this is just temporary. That person is going to another place. They'll meet again soon, and so on and so on. And the other, it's more terrifying. It's more what?
Yeah.
What?
Where is
is
he
so
going?
unfair. It doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense, and this is gonna. So it's a completely different experience. So is there a meaning to life? Depends on who you ask. If you ask religions, each religion will give you a different answer. But if you're not relying on outside institutions or ideologies or systems of belief to give you these answers, then you're going to have to figure it out. But certainly there are things that have meaning to you. And, these are the things that...
that matter the most in your life.
Yeah, and you've all experienced some of these moments.
Yeah.
So just learn to pinpoint them and say, okay, I want more of this. I want more of that.
I think in terms of religion especially, at least what I've noticed in life is that, and this is common, people fear what they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot in life that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And when it comes to religion, it takes that burden off of not knowing. Because that really is one of the most dreadful emotions. Being unaware of something creates anger, it creates so many different types of volatile emotions. Because we want to know. That is, I think, one of the essence of being human is wanting to know things, wanting to collect things. Yeah, curiosity.
Yeah.
It goes even more than the essence of being human. It's the essence of a living being. Because once again, you want to know what you're up against to know whether you go for it or not go for it. I mean, that's the reason when you first enter a dark room, the first thing you do, you turn on the light.
Or you start touching around.
Yeah,
like,
because you want to know.
where am I?
That's a knowledge, when seeing is knowing. So you want to see where the obstacles are. Is there a predator? Is there danger? Is there something that I like that I'm going to go and grab and eat, So yeah, absolutely. The lack of knowledge is fear, is absolute state of fear. And certainly, religion does a good job at bringing comfort and alleviating a lot of those fears. Now it has less and less of a strong hold on people, so it's less influential, and because it's more and more difficult, because the more we know that, a lot of these theories could have been wrong, right? So that's the tricky part.
Isn't it the more we know, the worse it gets?
Sometimes,
Sometimes it is the situation. It is.
Most of the times it is. The more you know, the worse it gets. Well, know what? Not when it comes to the self. I feel that the more you know yourself, that's a plus point for you. The more you know yourself, the better you'll navigate through the world. The more you know truth about the world, the more you realize that that's it's really bad shit happening.
It is.
But the more you know yourself, I think. Once you're past that point of, I have to accept that I'm imperfect. I have to accept that there are some features that I didn't choose. But
I have to accept that I'm scared of myself.
Exactly. But once you're past that, I think there's good stuff there.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Following up on belief systems, what is the belief system you go by? Do you have a belief system? Doesn't necessarily need to be a religion or something, but what do you go by in your everyday life? Being exposed to such knowledge, and how do you live your life by?
Well, we kind of mentioned these points scarcely in the previous half hour that we've been talking, and so I'll just go back to that. It really is really try to identify what works for you and what doesn't. I try to make it that simple. which is difficult because you can very easily get carried away by things that seem important. But at the end of the day, it's a permanent exercise to constantly remind yourself that you really are finite. And everybody likes to think that, I don't mean to be dramatic, but everybody likes to think that they're going to die very old comfortably in their sleep. But statistically speaking, it's not true. I mean, so I'm not saying you should wake up every day thinking about your death, but just knowing that you have a very limited time, and it could either crush you and freeze you. Then why am I here? If none of it has meaning, or it can go the other way, and I try to be usually on that
On the
other
other
side,
side,
which
yeah.
is no, because I have a limited time I'm going, and because maybe perhaps most likely there's no meaning, then no, I'm going to create these meanings, and I'm going to pursue these experiences that have historically proven to be fruitful and meaningful for me. And to each one their own, right? You can find that it's being surrounded by friends. Like I love hanging out with friends. Like to me, that's the most important thing. It sounds stupid, right? But it's not. Like, because I find
It's a
myself
moment you enjoy. Yeah.
being at my best when I'm enjoyed by good company and people I love. When I was in school, I once a teacher asked me what I wanted to do in life, and I said something, and everybody thought it was a joke, and it wasn't. And I said that my life goal was to never wake up to an alarm clock. And everybody laughed because they thought I was just making, because everybody complains about having to wake up early for school.
Yeah.
Well, half of it was in jest, obviously, but that is very important for me. And the fact that I got to a point where I'm able to wake up on my own terms, that does matter. It's little things that somebody might be hearing this and be like, what? That's that important? Maybe that's not important to you. It is very important to me, right? And vice versa. There's something that might be deeply important to you, and leave me completely indifferent. So my own belief of system, it really is just self-knowledge, which is this Socratic injunction, know thyself, which is the beginning of learning how to navigate through this thing, which we call life.
Speaking just a bit more now, then we'll segue into something else, but your academia and philosophy, has there been any area of studies or any research topics that you've dived into that you find interesting or very passionate about?
Well, of course, I've worked I've worked on a comparative study of Freud and Nietzsche first, and then what I worked on was then I got into aesthetics, which is philosophy of arts, and I worked a lot on beauty and the sublime. But the idea was then to use aesthetics as a starting point, but then see the metaphysical and ethical repercussions of a revolution in arts. It's going to sound boring now, but Spinoza is one of the philosophers that I've worked on a lot. And what I do now in the research that I'm working on now is basically a rereading of Spinoza under the light of contemporary biology and neuroscience, which is really illuminating. Spinoza is an extremely difficult philosopher, very obscure, very, very difficult to read and to understand. And there's a lot of things that we thought we'd understood about what he was, about some of his ideas, that we now can only understand because we have better tools in neuroscience and in biology. And it's crazy because they barely had 17th century, like they were just starting to have dissections of bodies. So the power of visualization and imaginations that allowed him to imagine reality to be the way he described it is very fascinating to me. And so yes, I my areas of interest now, to summarize it again, very long answer to a very straightforward answer, would be Spinoza, a French philosopher called Jean-Marie Guyot, relatively unknown, evolutionary biology, and neuroscience.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I also, do you dabble in biomedical ethics as well?
Well, I do teach. I've taught that course a number of times, but that's not. I mean, it's different. This is
It's
teaching.
a different thing.
Ah.
Yeah, it's a
It's
different
teaching.
thing.
Oh, okay.
It's a whole
But
different
I
thing.
don't research in that. No, this is teaching, and I've taught that course a number of times. It's a good course. It's a requirement for students who are doing like pre-med, lab, things like that, and some of them take it as an They need humanities or an elective, and it's a nice course. You learn a lot.
One thing I'd like to ask is, in all these circumstances that are going around currently with the crisis, with the port explosion that happened the past year, and a lot of numerous things.
Yeah.
Do you really believe there would be any future for what's for this country? Like for instance, do you think that we're going to a way that is more tragic than before, or do you believe that there might be hope for that?
I have to believe that there's hope.
Yeah.
I would like that. The problem is time frame. How long? Is it going to be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, right? What's sad for me is to see that vicious circle happening over and over again. Because when I see you now in this situation, I see myself as a student when I felt that I was in a country that is not livable and I couldn't wait to leave, and waiting for it to get better. And then when it seemed to be getting better, I came back. And now you guys are in the same situation. Like everybody's leaving, and everybody's like, okay, but when it gets better, we'll come back.
Yeah, very true.
And my parents did that as well, right? So
it's a cycle.
That's the sad part. So my question is, will we ever break
out of the cycle?
Out of that cycle? Because it's ups and downs. The country keeps getting really bad and then getting
slightly
good,
better.
right? But the challenge for me is to break out of that circle, which is terrifying. Looking back, and again, I look at you guys, and you're exactly in the same situation. Everybody's like looking forward to leaving the country or trying to leave the country because they feel that there's no hope here. And maybe in a few years we'll come back and help and do whatever and contribute and do whatever. Well, that's exactly what we were thinking when we were university students and high school students. Exactly like that. And that's the sad part for me. So there'll definitely be ups and downs. I just hope that the ups will be longer and that the downs won't be as bad. But anybody who I know, I don't have the capacity to project myself and see what's going to happen. And I think anybody who tells you they do is just
bullshitting.
or mostly bullshitting themselves. Like you can't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, one saying that got me through a very difficult time in my life was the only certainty is uncertainty.
Well, if you can make peace with that, it's good.
That helped me a lot in my life.
Yeah, if you can make peace with that, that's very good. Be at peace with uncertainty and not being a control freak, because as we were saying earlier, you quickly realize, especially in times like these, that there are very few things you can control actually. And it's times of tragedy that show you that. If somebody dear to you dies, you realize that, oh, I don't have any control over this. If your city explodes, you realize that, oh, I don't have control over this. If you're trying to send an application on time, but there's no electricity and internet, you realize that, I have right?
I had to deal with that.
Yeah.
You did.
So accepting, being able to accept this level of uncertainty without going crazy and destroying everything, that's very good. That's very good.
Thank you.
And how was your experience in France? Was the shift in cultures that impactful to you, or did you take your ideologies and went there and you didn't really change them?
No. I mean, there was not a big shift in cultures because I grew up, again, I went to a French high school. It's very different, right? I mean, if you go to lycée here, it's not the same as living in France, not at all. But I mean, I was fairly exposed to French culture. I spoke the language fluently. I had read a lot of French authors. I had seen a lot of French cinema. Like I wasn't very. It's not like I moved to Japan, right?
Yeah,
so
I get it.
it's
It
something that was there was a proximity.
Something familiar.
Very
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah.
And no, listen. Once I got past the initial what I call the European loneliness, which we don't really have here, because here it's much easier to
communicate.
Yeah, and to have a social life. And remember, because when I first moved to France, there was like we had email, but it was like you'd send someone an email and then they'll answer 3 days later.
Yeah.
You didn't have smartphones or
Very true.
you weren't always in touch with your friends. I had to buy a card and then go to a machine and then try to call my parents once a week. Like
it was a hassle.
It's weird because it feels like an alien world right now that everything's so easy, which is amazing, by the way. But back then it was a thing. Like you really felt that you were excluded. But once I got past these first 3-4 months, I had a great time at university. I made amazing friends. I formed friendships that still exist today, very strong friendships there. I already had very strong friendships with my friends from Lebanon, but I was also fortunate enough to build very strong relationships with people there. It's I don't think there's a good city and a bad city. There's your experience in the city.
Yeah.
There's people I know people who went to Paris, who were my age, who moved to Paris at the same time as I did, and who stayed as long as I did, and who hated it. And me, it was some of the best years of my life. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I still go very often. I'm probably going to spend most of the winter and spring there also this year as well, because to me it really feels like my second home. Nothing negative to say about those years.
Speaking just a bit more into what we were talking about with phones, I want to speak a bit into social media.
Yeah.
And what is a philosopher's perspective on this new age that we live in with telephones and instant communication and social media, and how do you think that has affected our social landscape, and has it been for the better or for the worse?
Well, of course there are great things about it. Like I said, staying in touch with people, being able to see what other people are doing and all of that. Of course there are great things. So I'm not going to be one of these, like, oh, life before was better, because you can take every epoch and then dissect and decide what's good technology, bad technology. They did that with electricity, they did that with telephones, then they did that with computers, then they did that. Technology is technology. Now, are there things that are really bad and we're not aware of? Of course there are. And you don't even have to ask a philosopher, ask a neuroscientist what it does to the brain that the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is look at your phone, for example.
Yeah.
Just ask them.
That is the slightest example.
It drives you insane. It's not coincidental that positivity and happiness culture is huge, and wellness culture is huge nowadays, because nobody's happy and well
at all.
That's why it's a symptom. That's why. And so we have to think about it. We have to be able to connect the dots. Now, I'm not saying the fact that we all have phones and we all have social media and we have, but we have to be able to reflect and on how we use it and what it's doing to us. So, and that can get very difficult. And again, neuroscience shows that if you were there are very simple things to do. Remember, we were talking about brain hacks earlier.
True.
If you're able, for example, to start implementing a very simple thing. If you're able to every morning wake up and resist the urge to touch your phone for an hour, and have an hour for yourself without any of the phone distractions, without the cat videos, without the WhatsApps, without the tweets, without
the memes, without
Instagram, without anything, you will automatically have a better day. You will be more at peace with yourself. You will be calmer. You will be more focused. Everybody knows I have ADHD. Of course you have ADHD because you're constantly distracted.
constantly looking at different things at the same
Yeah,
time. And you're
yeah.
like,
They they tell you, well, it's fine, or when you're talking to someone and they're like, don't worry, I'm a good multitasker. It's not true, because there actually is no such thing as multitasking.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. You can't. Your brain cannot focus on two things at the same time.
Yeah.
So you're
Practically
constantly,
speaking, yeah.
and you're actually not focusing on anything really. And that urge you have whenever you something, and then how many times do you pick up your phone, even if there's no notification, nothing, you just
Yeah.
pick it up. And so ideally, if you could get to a point where you can just monitor yourself and understand all of the 90% of your life happens subconsciously. 90% of your behavior, when you
Yeah.
wake up, you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you get dressed. You don't do this consciously. You go, you have a glass of water, you check your phone. If you become aware of these things, you realize that you're just in autopilot mode. So if you can catch yourself when it comes to your usage of social media, when you're posting something, ask yourself, why am I posting it? Because, for example, if you're posting something because you're craving attention, nobody's making fun of you for craving attention, but that's a real problem, because it means that there's a lack somewhere. And if you're hoping to fill
that void with
there, it's not going to happen. That's the problem, is that it's a not a true problem solver. It's a
tool we think could solve our problems.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. So when somebody's, if you post a mirror selfie and say, I look beautiful today, I love myself, if you really loved yourself, you would not need the validation of strangers online.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
So these are the things we need to think about. Or like if you post something and you caption it with, choose to be happy every day. Happy people don't think about happiness. They're just happy. They're not obsessed with it, right? So if that's your thing, it's a symptom. It doesn't, it's nothing to be ashamed of, but usually your obsession is something you're struggling with. So if somebody's posting mirror selfies all day and saying they feel empowered,
They're struggling with
it.
Confidence, or like maybe.
But
that's one thing.
it is, and so
Or
the only way to make this better is to become aware of it. If somebody is all day on social media posting inspirational and motivational quotes and about
they're not really going to be aware
Why
of it.
are they?
It's right, because it's their own, it's a mirror of their own struggles actually. But if they're not aware of it, it's a problem. And so the only way for social media not to be a negative experience, because it can be a wonderful tool in so many aspects, is once again to keep yourself in check. Like understand, catch yourself and understanding, why am I posting this?
Yeah.
Right?
It's definitely dangerous to receive love from other people before you've given it to yourself.
Before you've given it to yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably, but it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. Loving yourself is difficult. The problem is there's a tendency to think that, well, yeah, but if I just keep saying it and I keep,
then I would believe it, and it's not.
Then
the
I'll
case.
believe it, and it's almost never the case. It's rarely the case. This is one of the problems of social media. There are other problems, of course, which is the death of nuance. Nuanced debates. Usually, what social media did is that it was supposed to be, freedom of information and knowledge and exchange of knowledge. But what it ended up doing is
trying to put everyone converging into the same person.
Yes, and then the opposite. So
the
a
opposite
very
as well,
polarized
exactly,
world. So now whatever you post, it's either going to be validated by people who think
Exactly
already
like
like
you,
you, so you get the likes, or trolls, people who think the opposite and they're gonna bully you, shame you, and do all of that. And that can get extremely tricky too. And there's no room for conversation, because who can have a conversation on Twitter? People are like, yeah, but this is a debate. No, it's not a debate. This is not how debates happen. Debates don't happen in a 280 character tweet. Even if you post 4 tweets, it's a thread. This is you're not going to reach
a conclusion with that debate.
Definitely not a conclusion. Not even a semblance of depth of conversation in a tweet or
an understanding of the other
post.
person.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, what I would say is just be careful with how we use them. Doesn't mean that they're bad. It means that, you know, we don't know enough, so we use it badly. You know, if you use electricity badly, you set your house on fire. Doesn't mean electricity is bad. Electricity is wonderful. It gives you light and heat and TV shows, right?
Yeah.
But
Binging on Netflix as well.
but you know, you've been binging on Netflix.
I've been binging
Really?
a lot on Netflix. I have. But once you go down that road, you like, it's hard for you to go out of it until you finish that series. And I have that binging factor that works very well with me.
Okay.
So I have to like watch everything until
We
I no
both
longer have it.
want to get everything done as soon as we can.
So even if it's like a 6-season series, you need to get it.
Whatever.
3 days in a row. It's a marathon.
Okay.
It's a marathon.
Okay.
I have a question to ask about your music.
Yeah.
And is your music a reflection of your experiences and maybe not just experiences, but what like the different paths you've taken, or like is it like a self-image of what you represent?
Yeah, it's definitely an expression of your emotional experience. For me, at least, you know, I'm that kind of musician. Some musicians are able to write about topics, right? So, for example, I'm going to write a song about the revolution. I'm going to write a song about social justice. I'm going to write a song about empowerment. I'm gonna, and that's great for them. But I've never been able to be that type of musician or artist. So yes, to me, it's a very visceral expression of my own experience, my own suffering, my own pain, my own, and it's an outlet. It's an emotional biography.
Yeah, exactly. It is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the space it comes from.
And is that why you think it's so important to have in your life? Because it is an outlet for you, and it allows you to process through some of the things
to
that
express
might happen
yourself.
to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's both, and it goes both ways, because I very, very early on in life realized how important it was for me to even listen. Like the intensity of emotions that I felt very early as a kid when I listened to specific music was not something I'd experienced before. So very intuitively I was just drawn to this, like, what is happening to me here? I don't understand. Like, I've never experienced anything like this. So very quickly it became
connected.
And it became very important for me to, you know, because I would then look at my favorite artists, and which is weird, by the way, because you know, when you love your favorite artist, you love a person who doesn't know you exist, but they're so important to you because they make such a difference in your life. They don't even know, right? Yeah. So I was aware of this very early on, and realizing that somebody's experience, you can connect with it. And so, it's twofold, because on the one hand, making music now, it allows me to express myself to me the way I know how to. And on the other hand, you know, it makes me very happy when
other people connect.
When there's a connection like that, when somebody, you know, sends me a message or something saying, you know, I've been listening to this song all month, or I've listened to this song during a breakup, or me and my girlfriend used to listen to this song, or this song reminds me of my high school, or this song, you know, being part of somebody's life's playlist is rewarding, you know, and it goes both ways, you know, as an artist, to be able to be part of somebody else's life like that, and also, you know, your favorite artists, what they do to you.
Definitely. Wow. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, like being part of someone's playlist.
Yeah.
Like thinking about it in a theoretical way, like
the soundtrack of your life, you know, if somebody was filming your life, there's a soundtrack. Yeah. And you know, it's a fun thought.
Is that sorry.
It's fruitful to like contribute to someone's life like that.
Yeah, especially strangers, you know, it's very rewarding. Like gratitude is, especially, by the way, more than giving, receiving gratitude is extremely rewarding. So when you get good feedback for something you've done, be it you know, it can be music, or even it can be a course that you taught, and you know, and a student, because it does happen, and it makes my day, you know, when a student sends an email saying, I loved the class, I learned a lot, well, you know, because I can then relate to, these professors that I was talking about, and saying, well, I'm so happy that I can do that, because I understand how important it was for me to have these encounters with professors, with music. So if I'm able to be on the other side of the encounter as a philosophy instructor or as a musician, it's extremely rewarding. Yeah.
And you feel fulfilled, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I think saying more on what you were talking about, like self-expression, I believe that's very important, like for people to practice. And I think that's what we're also trying to do in the podcast, is to express ourselves and letting people relate, like you were saying, and like maybe influence people as well.
Yeah.
Along the way. And thank you for coming on our show.
Yeah.
And we're glad you pulled through. And I think that's how we end it actually usually by
reverse psychology.
Reverse psychology.
Yeah.
We tell people not to subscribe.
Okay.
Don't subscribe, don't
support
like
us
don't
all.
support us.
Thanks for having me, but why would you subscribe? Why?
Exactly.
Don't.
Okay, that's
purpose?
pushing it too far.
Hey, listen, they're gonna believe me.
They were gonna believe
Yeah, they're like, these guys are joking, but I'm not sure about him.
We've gone bankrupt.
Subscribe.
Thank you.